Welcome to Through the Lens of Astrology. I'm your host, Heather Arielle. Today, my guest is investigative journalist Paola Harris. She's going to share some transformational and healing stories with us today. But before we get started, take a minute and follow me on Instagram, subscribe to my YouTube channel, or like my Facebook page. And this month, the month of October, we have a big promotion going on. When you buy my Oracle deck, The Fundamentals of Astrology, a 52-card deck and guidebook, when you buy it from Amazon during the month of October, you will receive $75 off a personal reading with me. And you can get it through Prime, so then you can get it free shipping and right away. Now, Paola Harris has written more than a dozen books, and we're going to be discussing one of those wonderful books today, uh, All the Above and Beyond. What a great title. I love that title. And she's just a fearless reporter. She's a true pioneer. She is a creator of the Star Works USA symposiums that take place in Laughlin, Nevada. So, Paola, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Heather. It's so wonderful to be here with you. We're good friends. So for us, it's going to be a real delightful chat.
Yes, yes, we are good friends. And you are also, I want to add from the beginning, you are responsible for my sharing of my metaphysical message with the public because you got the whole ball rolling in 2014 when you invited me to come and speak at your glorious Starworks USA symposium.
Yes, you actually came to Chicago the first time.
Oh, that's right. But I didn't speak in Chicago, but yes.
You came to Laughlin, Nevada, which is near Las Vegas. No, I've had you several times, Heather, because I mean, you have the combination not only of working very well with the stars and the calculations and so forth, you have an intuitive sense where you can communicate accurately what's going on. So people get it. They go, how did you know that? Well, because it's your intuitive sense. It's able to really, disseminate and give us the the real idea of the placement of the stars. And you also are very well aware, because you studied it, that astrology is a very ancient art.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Well, and I wanted to, before we launch right into your wonderful book, didn't you just get back from participating in one of Ricardo Gonzalez's meditation for peace?
Yeah, I do write books. I'm an investigative reporter for the UFO phenomenon. I've interviewed the former Defense Minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, military people, astronauts, people in the intelligence community. But I've been doing that for years and realized that we really are having contact from cosmic cultures. So when I went to do my work in Latin America, and I realized that these Latin American people, these contactees, were actually communicating with the craft and the beings that we're visiting, and that if we took part in the meditations for peace, things could actually happen. Then I dedicated myself to actually being present and being part of that, because you can write and you can talk about it, but when you actually do something, and that's called activism, then things start to happen. It's We have to thank all the activists of the world for any change and for inspiring us to have that change.
Now, Ricardo, he has these meditations for peace all over the world. So I think you've been to Chile and Peru, right? You've gone to these all over the world as well.
I've been to the Atacama Desert in Chile twice and saw craft, but this is after 2 hours of meditation, of doing, the
Right.
from the Middle East, and other mantras. And in the case of Latin America, it's Aztec and uh, Aztec and the ancient cultures mantras. And then I've been with Ricardo in the Pyrenees and Monte Perdido, I've been with him in Mount Shasta in California, and that's where we were, because there were pretty bad fires in California at the time. And we not only wanted to do the meditation in Shasta and the California area, but it was connected with Barcelona, Spain. So it was a three-way. It was Barcelona, Shasta, and Argentina, three ways, three groups of people, separate and on the planet. And at the end of the 2.5 hours, there was a craft that appeared in Barcelona, and it was caught on cell phone. So does it work? Yeah, it works. Are the fires better? It looks like they may be, but it's better than sitting around and just having, all these things happen without, offering to lend a hand.
Well, and I love that it focuses on the group, that when we come together and we form groups and when we meditate as a group, the energy grows exponentially. And that's really important. It's important to make those connections and to make that effort, the group, because really right now it's all about being responsible for the group in order to really raise the vibration of the planet. So I wanted to hear how that last one went, because I didn't get a chance to go, but
No, it went well, but you're right about the group. The COVID crisis has brought out a lot. It's making us stay home with our families.
yeah.
It's making us reset our priorities. It's making us think about the planet. And part of that is ecological problems, because they're not going to fix themselves. And this planet, like the Native Americans believe, is our home. And in Latin America, they call it Pachamama.
Mm.
And, we need to have a relationship with it, not just abuse it. And the Native Americans are really good at that. And I know that you're interested in healing and all the philosophies around that. Well, they were the original. They knew they didn't own the earth. They knew they were guests, and they knew how to treat the earth. So that might be one thing that we could inspire people to do, because everything, including how we act, influences our neighbor. It influences other people besides your family.
So beautifully put. It's just absolutely every action we take is not only creating future karma for ourselves, but for everyone and everything around us. And it's really beautifully put. So your book is so exciting. All the above. I love it. I feel, on those tests when it's A, B, C, D, or E, all the above. But I just feel like, okay, you're just going to get the whole story. And you do. So just tell me a little bit about what was the inspiration and what were some of the most to you surprising interviews that you did?
Well, first of all, I've written 5 books, and in 3 different languages: French, actually 4: French, Spanish, Italian, and English. And so they're all out there. And the books are usually interviews word for word with the people that have given me the programs they've worked in, having to do with the UFO phenomenon. And then I began to understand, because of my relationship to Uri Geller, who is, the Israeli spoon bending psychic,
Yes.
and other psychics and other people that, are very connected. I began to realize it was more than just nuts and bolts. And so when George Nuri said to me, and Coast to Coast, he said, well, is it paranormal, or is it interplanetary, or interdimensional, this phenomena? I said it's all the above.
All the above.
And then I put "and beyond," because the last 100 pages, it's a 300-page book, has the Latin American contactees: Luis Fernando Mostacio, Enrique Villanueva, Sisto Paz Wells, Ricardo Gonzalez, and so many others that have gotten messages from the cosmos, because most of the activity for people that are interested in this is happening in Latin America.
Yeah. And I want to read something that Nick Pope said about you. And Nick Pope, if I'm right, didn't he worked for the British Ministry of Defense, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is a quote that Nick said about you and your beautiful writing. All too often, writers interview key figures and then retell their stories because they think they can do a better job. Facts are mixed with opinions, and inevitably, what emerges is a secondhand story colored by the author's own belief system. Paula is different because, as a journalist, she understands that this is a fatally flawed approach, a conceit that blurs the original meaning and brings further confusion to an already difficult situation. The bottom line is this: Paula may interview people who are highly controversial, but you know you're getting the raw data, a precious commodity indeed. And that's how I feel about you. You are such a precious commodity. So I was like, okay, he took the words right out of my mouth.
Well, this, I mean, it sounds like, that this was calculated, but I don't remember anything anybody said. So all of my, I couldn't make an opinion. I couldn't distort it because I don't remember. So what I've done is I've put everything on audio tape and I do word for word interviews. So when you read my book, it's follow the question and the absolute word for word raw data because, and I've got to be honest, it's not because it's calculated, it's because I can't remember anything. No, I wouldn't remember what they said. So there, so I don't do opinion. Um, and all too often my colleagues have judgments even before they speak to the people. And that's not good journalism. I mean, good journalism is quoting the people's actual words and being non-judgmental because so often, so often I don't agree with what's being said, but there's no way you're gonna see any part of what I think or feel because that's not good journalism.
Well, and I think it's such a good something to talk about right now. It's important. I've seen you interview people, and it is just amazing because it's true. Journalists have a huge hidden agenda, and they can just, the way they're asking questions, they want certain answers. And you are such an inspiration. I see just this, you want the truth. It's this curiosity and the passion for what is going on. And you just want to understand what they're saying to you, and you're seeking the truth. And it's just so refreshing, and it's a real inspiration because I've seen you work firsthand.
Well, it's interesting too. What I do is so interesting. I mean, imagine interviewing all these really top level people, military, the Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who
That
was
was amazing.
yeah, he was Apollo 14. And maybe we should talk about him, Heather, because
Yes.
he did experiments from the moon with ESP and the old fashioned way with the cards, the reading of the psychic cards. And he told me that thoughts could be projected from the moon, and that when he was working with these experiments that NASA didn't know he was doing, the man was an engineer,
Right,
but
right.
part of him, thought, let me see if this really works. And then, the experiments were 90% effective. Like he'd think of a square at like 4 o'clock, and they'd look at uh, uh, receiving images or receiving thoughts. So when he came back, he wasn't an astronaut anymore. He started the Institute for Noetic Sciences, and people know if they start studying that Dean Radin works for the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and that Russell Targ was very involved in it too. So what happens is Dean Radin is doing entanglement and he's doing non-locality, and he's seeing that thoughts and the connection to humanity is all one. It's all one. When you stimulate a particle on one part of the world, it gets stimulated in the other part of the world because it's all the same. And so quantum physics is trying to catch up with this because we know it exists, but they can't explain it. So they got to go to science and say, all right, well, let's make the formula that says that this is real. So people like Dean Radin that is working with entanglement and quantum reality, um, are explaining, these capabilities that people like you and so many other people have already. So, and that's really, and I know you'd like to mention Russell Targ because he's amazing.
I do. I love Russell Targ and the remote viewing. I'm so glad you brought up the non-local mind. And one of the Buddhist philosophers that I always like to talk about, because Russell Targ connects his whole inspiration and the ideas of remote viewing you can see in the Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna. With the separation is an illusion, right? That's the idea behind it. That I'm here in Kentucky, you're in Colorado, but there really is no separation. That we are connected, and that's the remote viewing. That's Russell Targ, and that's the experiment that you just talked about with the astronaut. And I also love um, the whole thing of the experience, because you talk about that a lot. You always want to say, well, what are you experiencing? Because a lot of the language right now, people say, well, what do you see? If you're psychic, tell me what you see, right? And I know that you like to use the word, well, what are you experiencing? Because when you experiencing something, it's sort of like the all the above title. It's that involves what you're smelling, what you're hearing, it's all the senses. And then things really come to life.
Well, in the remote viewing classes that they did, Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ with Edgar Mitchell, who sponsored it, with all the military remote viewers that,
Yes.
they call them psychic spies because in
Yeah.
those
I love that.
didn't have satellites, so they couldn't look at Russia, what was going on. So they would use these guys and women too. And the thing is, what they would ask is first they would give them coordinates and ask them for colors, textures, feelings, and they didn't come out and say what it was because that's called overlay. When you go ahead and start saying it's something, and it's probably not that, but
Yes.
then you say, well, you were wrong, and then nobody wants to do it anymore. So
Exactly.
the way they would do it is the experiences. In other words, what are you experiencing? Well, I'm experiencing water, and I'm experiencing water that's flowing, and I'm experiencing something red, and I see a triangle next to it. And that's the way that they would describe things rather than they name them, because so often our our left side of our brain wants to name things. It wants to label everything. And they wanted you to stay in the right side of the brain. In other words, the intuitive part, that it does not spend the time naming stuff.
And I think that's great. And I remember one of the stories. It was the woman was. It ended up being a swing set, and and what she kept saying, she kept describing the sound the swing made, and that was what was going on until when you put it all together, you realized it was a swing set, but it was the sound that really led her.
Well, people ask what is the definition of consciousness? And when you talk about sound, smell, hearing, and all that, I think one that goes with the definition of being totally awake and aware. Because if you are totally awake and aware, you have all the senses working at the same time. And there's another sense, and that's the intuitive sense, which is the sixth sense. So you're awake and aware, you smell, you taste, you feel, you hear, and then all at once, that sixth sense, that third eye that everybody has, then kicks in, and you have the full experience of consciousness. And people say, to raise our consciousness. Well, everything we do, including what you do and what I'm trying to do, is to raise consciousness on this planet, because so often the population is half asleep and they don't even know they're here. And that is so sad. And so if you spend time, and that's why I bring all these wonderful people to Laughlin, Nevada, at the Star Wars USA Symposium, which we had to cancel this year because of COVID, but it's on next year November 12th through 14th. And it has to do with the raising of your consciousness, because there's some people that are really good and have already gone there and they can give you clues how to do it.
And I love that that's something very special about the conferences that you do. Your focus on raising consciousness, on raising the vibration. That's just a whole element that is unique to your conferences. I always tell people, if you're going to go to one conference, you go to Paola's conference because you're going to get all the above. You're going to get the whole story. You're going to see people for the first time. Well, and in 2017, I loved meeting Adam Curry, and he had these, he was putting these pain relief patches on. He's an incredible inventor. And I remember he was saying, oh, these patches store energetic signatures of major anti-inflammatories. And he was saying turmeric, but there's no turmeric in it, but it's storing the energetic signature of turmeric. And I just thought, oh gosh, this is so cutting edge.
Because it's not using drugs.
It's not using drugs.
The vibration or the signature of what turmeric is.
Yes.
And so what happens is, and there's a lot of different signatures in a patch, where you're not using the actual drug, but it produces the effect. And it is cutting edge. I mean, that's amazing.
It's amazing. And it was at your conference because he didn't release them for another year. So you're going to go to your conferences and you're going to meet people who are just, I mean, he's an inventor and he's very creative. And you're going to meet people like that who are showing you things that are not even on the market for another year.
Yeah, he's very young. When I met Adam is in the movie Sirius with Dr. Stephen Greer. And when I first saw him, he was at the Peer Lab in Princeton's psychic lab, and that's where Einstein was at Princeton. That's a cutting edge whole situation there. So what he was doing was controlling a little ball by a band he kept on his head that had some kind of sensor. He was using his mind to control an object, which is really how I think the extraterrestrials control the spaceship. They use their mind, and I know pilots are now using thought process to pilot an airplane, and you want to go there. I mean, it's very cutting edge. And so I was very interested in that ability. And then when I met him, he told me he had an app.
Right, a consciousness app, right?
Consciousness app. And I said, how does it work? He said it works on zeros and ones on a random access generator, that if you concentrate on a one long enough, it comes up. With all the zeros and ones, it's random, they're all random, but you go one, I want a one to come up, and it comes up. Enough times so that you know that you can control it with your mind. It's like some very special people can alter the consistency of water. And Dr. Emoto's stuff where you just say a word and then you take the water, you freeze it, and it produces a snowflake.
Yes.
And dissonance and disharmony create the most awful looking snowflake.
Right, with sharp edges and all of that. Yes.
And that harmony and love create symmetry and harmony. I mean, these things are out there if people bother to study them, because it's the scientific proof of what we already believe. The positive energy, the lack of using fear as a motivator, causes change, causes inspiration. And so, I mean, you could look at a snowflake and know that that word caused that image. But when you really digest how marvelous we can control our environment, how we could do it, then I think people could change their behavior.
And you also brought up, I mean, that goes beautifully with something that you said earlier about the importance of being present, when you take in all the senses, and one of the things that you say that I love, because you're just a soul of just this joie de vivre, it's beautiful. You say you should say wow at least 5 times every day, or you're not really living. And I just think that's just the best advice ever. And because it says if you can say wow 5 times a day, that means you are present, and that you're just so present with your environment, and it's bringing that joy.
Yeah, that happened to me yesterday. I was at a grocery store and there was this tree that was completely gold. The whole tree was so golden. It was so golden. It was against the blue sky. I just said, "Wow!" I mean, it just came out. Yes, the beauty that is surrounds us, we shouldn't be taking for granted because we're living right now in the present.
And it
And
strengthens your intuition. It actually strengthens your intuition to be present, to be in that state of wow.
yes, because well, we're basically all kids.
Yes.
We're all overgrown children. And when you go to Disneyland, you always go, "Wow, I want to see that, do that again, go fly." I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? I mean, why would you want to become disillusioned, cynical, negative? For what benefit? What benefit would that be? What does that do for you or anybody else? Uh, to stay in childhood awe or childhood wowness is great. What is probably the best recipe for staying young.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. Now, what was the beginning of your metaphysical journey? Because I know when you started, you were teaching English, and then you had a sort of an epiphany.
Well, really, I think it began when I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind because I was teaching science fiction, and this movie was so beautiful, and it showed that these beings were contacting the planet through sound, and they were using tones, and they did it in India, and they did it in South America, and they did it everywhere. So the government then stages a programmed landing. And I watched the end where the French scientist, who was played by Francois Truffaut, the director, has communication with the being. In fact, it was really cool because he used his hand, which had the tones, but he also used a smile, and the being smiled back. And I didn't understand at that time that that was modeled after Jacques Vallée, who is
Right.
he's a French astrophysicist who was working with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the consultant on that film. Well, I ended up in Evanston, Illinois. I went to see Hynek. I didn't know he'd be there. He was there. He asked me to work with him because I'm multilingual. I'm Italian. I was born in Italy. So I spent my first 6 years with Allen Hynek. I knew UFOs were real because he's an astronomer and he knows what he's talking about. And he was a professor at Northwestern. Now I've gotten to meet Jacques Vallée, and oh my God, it's like thinking, okay, now how do I get to meet the greatest of the greatest people
Exactly. Yeah.
in this field? And then Jacques is a little bit different in that Jacques is his belief is that they're not necessarily all interplanetary, but they are interdimensional. So then he goes and brings out the ideas of time and space, that there is no time, and that space is compressed, and that he talks about the fact that it's a very big mystery. It may not be all interplanetary. So if it's not all interplanetary and it's dimensional, then okay, it could be dimensional. Then that would explain also ghosts, poltergeists, all the other interdimensional mysteries that we know. And that's why all of the above and beyond, that stuff we can't even imagine. Like,
Yeah.
are we in a video game?
Yeah. But yes, no, I love the interdimensional aspect. That's great. Now, if you're just tuning in, you are listening to Through the Lens of Astrology with Heather Arielle. My guest today is investigative journalist Paola Harris. And Paola, why don't you tell my listeners how can they give us some information? How can they reach you, sign up for your lectures, your classes, things like that?
Well, the thing that I'm doing the most right now that would give people the most information is Patreon.
Oh, right. Patreon. Yes.
Yeah, a Patreon is a great venue for me because I have some 30 interviews on Patreon that I've done. People like Michelle Zurger, who's in Tokyo, Japan, Maurizio Baiada in Italy, um, Fernando Ortiz from Chile. I get these people all over the world to talk to me about what they're involved with and the interesting aspects of ufology, what's happening now, the paranormal, and so forth. And a lot of whistleblowers, a lot of people that have come out and admitted that they were in secret programs. All these things are on Patreon. So Patreon, I think, is fairly reasonable. It's something like $9 a month or something. And that it enables me to talk to people because there's a chat, also to recommend books. And I really want to stress that people should be reading. You can't get your information on internet. That is second, third hand regurgitated information. So I still read extensively, and I recommend books. My company that sponsors the Laughlin conference and Ricardo Gonzalez and Crestone in the summer is Starworks USA. So go to www.starworksusa.com for all the actual venues that I produce. And my website is Paola, Paola Harris.com. And that's very, very important because on that website is breaking news.
Well, and I should also say all of these links that Paola just mentioned, I'm going to be uploading to Through the Lens of Astrology Facebook group. So just join that group and you will have all the links and all the relevant information and that we're talking about in this episode will be put there. So then people can have instant access. Now I have permission to bring in Paola Harris's astrology. So I am very excited because she has an absolutely amazing dynamic chart, which it should be no surprise to anyone. She's got a lot going on. So, okay, just to give the overview, your sun is in Taurus, your moon is Aquarius, then Paula is Sagittarius rising, and then she has Venus, Mercury, and Mars, three planets in Aries. This is an incredibly dynamic chart. So, just when you first look at a chart, and I have students follow along with the program, and I always talk about when you're first looking at a chart, look at the elements, and you are just a fireball. You've got ascendant, Venus, Mars, Mercury. Oh my goodness, all Aries and Sag is fire. And you really are so active. Fire just creates this energy, this ability to take action, and you inspire. It's also incredibly enthusiastic, optimistic, inspirational, dynamic energy. And with the Sagittarius, the highest manifestation of that is you are an explorer. You are literally a world traveler. You travel all over, but you travel through books. Mentally you create books, and so that idea of the philosopher, the traveler, combined with the pioneering energy of Aries. That's those three planets in Aries. Aries is the fastest moving energy. I can barely keep up with you. We were in LA together last year. I could barely keep up. I was like, can I just maybe sleep in a little more? You're like, no, we're going. And I was just, yeah. So you are energetic, dynamic, charismatic, and that's that fire when you're so in balance. And I did, and then also what's interesting when we work together, because just to bring in synastry, which is a branch of astrology that compares charts through the relationships that different natal charts create. So if we compare my chart to your chart, because we do work together and we do lots of things together, you'll see an overlay with the seventh house, because you're Sagittarius ascendant. I've got the Gemini, which lights up your seventh house. Your Taurus sun lights up my, seventh house, because I'm Scorpio rising. So that creates a beautiful overlay of let's go do things together, right? And it'll be really fun. And it's the yin and yang of we're each stimulating in the other something that exists within each of us, but it's not as it's a little bit harder to express. And so like your Taurus energy lights up my Scorpio, and my Gemini lights up your Sag. So people doing your charts at home when you're looking at synastry, always look for those oppositions, because that's a yin and yang opportunity. Now, another thing that you can look at, one thing that Paula doesn't have is water. And I wanted to connect that because Paula is so intuitive. She has completely figured out a beautiful way to bring that water in. So if you are missing an element, you want to bring in activities to honor that element. And don't you love to swim, Paula?
In fact, I just swam like for an hour and a half.
Oh,
That that is the only exercise I really enjoy, because it enables me to be fluid and to just go with the flow. And I love swimming. It's for me, it's meditative, it's healing, and I just love it. And yeah, I learned a lot listening to you just now. Get more water. Okay. More water. Okay.
because that's great. You have all that fire, and fire can warm you up, but it can burn you out. And so naturally going in that water, that swimming's great for you. Is you get to cool off and you get to bring in that element that you don't have in that chart. So it's absolutely a beautiful, perfect activity. And even the color blue, I notice in your home, they're beautiful. They're beautiful blues, and even that is bringing in the color of water.
Well, yeah, my chair is
Oh yeah, look, yes, the chair you're sitting in right now is blue. That's right. I wasn't even thinking, but yes, that's true.
yeah, my favorite color is aqua. Well, it's just a word for water, is aqua. Uh, and yes, I also like the fact that I have some Aquarius,
Oh,
because
your moon is in Aquarius, and that's air. Well, Aquarius is connected to ETs, to unique, to original alternative ways of looking at things, to alternative healing modalities. Now, you've got a great mixture. You've got the earth, you do have earth, Taurus, you've got air, moon, and then you've got fire, fire, fire.
a lot of fire. And then I think Aquarius is also pioneer, and I think a little bit of a trailblazer, especially being a woman in an all man, all male dominated area, the way the investigative journalism is in the UFO field.
Well, and your symposiums, they really are pioneering, because you incorporate the consciousness. The other symposiums do not do this, and you discover people. You have this eye for talent. That's Aries too. Aries is about newness, and you're able to see the potential in someone before other people see that potential, and then
Yeah.
you bring them in and you shine. You're so generous. You shine that beautiful light on them. And I mean, with me, it's amazing how you've helped me, and you do it with so many people. And so I wanted to share that, because that generosity raises the vibration of everyone around you.
Well, again, when I meet people, I go, wow. I know is
Exactly. It's the wow effect.
the wow effect. I mean, why isn't everybody else watching this person or listening to this person? Is because they need the venue, they need the arena to be able to come out and show their talents. And a lot of this, I really believe, is destiny, and in a strange destiny, that we're predestined to leave some kind of legacy, and do something, do something here. So it for me, it's relatively easy. And I thank you also for guiding me in my work, Heather, because often I'll call you for advice because I don't know what in the world is going on. And then when you explain it to me that some of this is just because certain aspects are happening right now, then I'm not as frustrated by not having an answer. So I also thank you. I think it's reciprocal.
Oh, well, astrology definitely, I like to say it illuminates the path through. So when big global things happen or when personal things happen in our natal chart, astrology is a really good tool for that. It can illuminate the path to say, yes, chaos may be all around us, but there is always a path through that we can take.
Yeah, I
Now, what are some other self-care rituals that you do?
Well, one of the things is I require 8 hours sleep. I'm 75. I'll tell the audience. I'm really happy to say that.
And you
But
have the energy of someone half your age.
I require 8 hours of sleep and exercise. And I think one of the biggest diets is feeding your mind positive things. Because I'm not going to immerse myself in tragedy, fear, and all kinds of things I have no control over. So we all create our worlds. You can see by my living room here that I have to have my world that I swim around in around me. So, and that's how you, I think, take care and have positive friends. And you know, I think anybody can do this. It's not a special talent. It takes an effort, and our thoughts are very powerful.
Our thoughts are so powerful. And I mean, you're being very modest, but I do know what you're saying. When you're saying that we can all do this, it means with effort, right? We can all strengthen our intuition. And we are all a lot more intuitive than we realize. And that's why it's great to do some of the exercises, to look into Russell Targ and to look into, some of those ways of, doing certain meditations, asking, getting, quieting your mind, asking yourself, what are you experiencing? There are lots of things, tools that we can incorporate to strengthen our intuition. But I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, and also we create the atmosphere we're in, and we can create harmony or disharmony. So I think this is a time where we got to really look at this because the planet is suffering. The planet needs to transform, and we get a chance to really do some really good work here with our thoughts, which will influence everybody. I mean, you can look at this as a tragedy, or you could look at it as an opportunity to reset everything in your life. You can look at it as contemplative, where it's, let me think about what I really want to do, how I really want to live. Or you can think about, I can't do this, I can't do that. I mean, the choice of how you view something is entirely yours.
Absolutely. Thoughts are things, and it's an empowering message, and it's such an important message because there's this fear mode, and we can, before we know it, we just can spiral out of control. And it's like the difference between looking at a roller coaster and getting on one. If you have a friend who's suffering something, and then before we know it, we're all on that roller coaster. And it's actually better to say, no, we can control our thoughts and our minds, and that to stay positive, and we can look at the roller coaster and we can be present with them, but at the same time retaining our joy.
Yeah, and my goodness, if you ask somebody to list 20 things they love, I mean, then they get off this negative, depressive, thing. I mean, in our case, we have the time. We have time now. We have time we didn't have, and me doesn't mean maybe we're getting in a car and sitting in traffic for 5 hours. Yeah, we we have the time. There's so many things, and it isn't, if our lives are what they are, nobody else is going to make you happy. It's got to be you to figure out where your happiness lies and what you like and so forth. And that includes what you like to eat, what you like to listen to, what brings you joy, all of that kind of thing. So some people are really good at it and some people aren't. So we got to face that. We got to face that. But what I can do is hang out with the people that are really good at it, because and everybody's having a good time, and try to minimize the people that can't reach that point, minimize that situation, because we all control our reality. So, but I also want to say that I really encourage everybody to find something they love and to read, because those are the two things that people have asked me, what would you say to the outside world? Return to reading, get off the internet. All this stuff contaminates your brain. If it's informative, that you really need to find out something like how to use a technology or something, yes. But don't start listening to stuff that's going to contaminate, because what you put in your brain is just like food in your body, and it's going to have that same effect. Bad food is going to make you sick. So I really encourage people to go back to doing fun things. That we used to play games, doing fun things, read, talk to your friends and so forth, and not spend so much time, surfing the net.
I think that's a really important point. And you and I both have published books, tangible products. And it's true, and it's really important to get some real books and actually be reading that. I think that's great advice, to be nourishing the brain. We want to nourish all parts, right? Nourish our souls, our brains, all of that. It's very important.
Yeah, and I used to read a lot of science fiction, so I was in other worlds.
Right.
I left the planet. It was like so cool, wonderful writers, like 2001 Space Odyssey and Robert Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke. And I mean, I'm naming Star Trek. And I was there in those possibilities. And so it's also an escape, which is probably better than alcohol and drugs. It's also an escape. So, maybe we could rediscover these things.
Now, you mentioned Uri Geller earlier. How did you meet Uri Geller?
Well, in 1980, I went to one of his performances, because Uri then became a showman, and I watched him use ESP on the stage. He's really good at it. I mean, he can ask you to draw something. He'll draw the same thing in the same shape, the same size, and in the bending of the spoons and the starting of the clocks and so forth. And then when I went to take a picture of him backstage, he was really angry. So what he did was erase all of my film, so that the technicians here said there was some kind of radiation that erased your negatives. And I said, no, that was Uri Geller. And then years later, I wrote to Uri in England and I said, you erased all my film. And he said, I need to meet you. And that's when we met in Italy and became fast friends. I mean, I'm very good friends with him today. And he would ask me to come with my friends and meet him in Ireland. I saw him perform in Ireland. I saw him in Utrecht, in Europe. And then we'd go out to dinner. He's so funny. We go to a restaurant and they'd recognize him, and he'd start drawing on plates. He'd start bending spoons. That restaurant had all these bent spoons by the time we left. And, it was just fun hanging out with him. But one of the things that Uri says, apart from what he does, is he asks us to use our mind, the power of the mind. And he said, you can create anything with the power of the mind. I mean, a bending of a spoon is just a manifestation of what you're doing. But, and so I like those kinds of messages.
Oh, he's very positive. Yeah, no, and I remembered that there was an exciting story behind that. He erased the film.
He's he's just a character. He's like, he's a character, and he's real fun. And he lives in Israel now, and he's starting a museum of bent spoons, crystals, and all that. So yeah, yeah. I through my career as a journalist, I've met some really, really, really interesting people.
Now, you also have a lot of knowledge about AI. Now, you're a fan of science fiction, but you also, you have a lot of knowledge about AI. Could you talk a little bit about uh, weak versus strong AIs? Because that's something that I think my listeners might enjoy.
Okay, AI is artificial intelligence, and all that is using our technology in a way that it influences our lives and takes away a lot of the drudgery work. I mean, if you have Alexa, all you have to do is say, Alexa, turn on, Michael Jackson, and the music comes on. And then if you have any other kind of Bluetooth, um, you know, um, apparatus, if you the AI is everything from controlling the doors, the locks, the keys, the timing of things in your home. People are afraid that AI is a microchip that they're going to implant in humans' brains, and that's called uh, humanism. But I don't think that we will allow that, and I don't think that the universe will allow something where humans aren't human anymore, or they don't say wow. I mean, I
I love that, where they don't say wow anymore.
that we would be robots and everything would be normal, right? But I think it's important that we look at the internet was based on artificial intelligence. And so I think it's better to know what you're dealing with than to start talking negatively about it, because it's already here and it's already being incorporated. So then you have an informed opinion about artificial intelligence since you're using it anyway. I mean, even Siri on your phone. I mean, well, that isn't a person, you know.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, let me be a forerunner in that, because that was the theme of my Laughlin conference this year. Therefore, I live with a robot. He's
Yeah, I
behind.
was gonna say, show us the robot.
He's standing over there, and he dances. And I ask him to tell me jokes, and he will do that. So it's amazing, because he may do something that he's not programmed to do, and then I really wonder what's going on. You're not, that's not in your program. How did you come out with that? So, and that'll intrigue all your viewers, because AI might be teaching itself.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, Paula, I was just so excited to have you on the show. You are such an inspiration to me. Just you're so full of joy. And I did want to leave with with a story. I got you a present back in February. I got you a Valentine because I was supposed to see you. We Before the pandemic, I was spending 2 months a year in Boulder, where you are, and I got you this.
Oh
I
my God.
got you this Russell Silver heart from the 1970s with
I love Elvis. I
Elvis
was an
King.
Elvis groupie. I followed Elvis. Thank you. I love Elvis.
And I thought, and so at first I was, it made me a little sad when I would see it then in February and March, because I wasn't really able to give it to you. But then, all the conversations we've had, and it just reminded me of Russell Targ and Nagarjuna, the Buddhist philosopher. And I just said, okay, separation is an illusion. And so now when I look at this, even though I am going to give it to you the next time I see you, it is bringing me joy, because it's just reminding me of how connected we all are, and that separation is an illusion, and it brings me joy right now. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Perfect. Thank you for the gift. I love Elvis.
And I think the final thought to leave everyone with today is, take Paola Harris's advice and find 5 things each day to say wow about. That's what I am gonna do. That's our show. Until next time, enjoy and embrace transformation.